All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Diane, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode.
My pleasure. Thank you, Eric, for having me. I'm very excited to do your show.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on, and you're a very familiar face because my mom actually was a huge fan of Better Off Dead, and so that was on rotation a lot at our house. So
fantastic. I love this film. Fantastic.
I was
writing a book about it right now. So
really,
Mom, yes, that I will be coming out with a book, knock on wood, around February. So
that's awesome.
So if you're a Better Off Dead fan, check my website. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it was a mind-shattering moment when I found out that you weren't actually French, because that was
I'm really French. I'm not American. I do a very good American accent. So no.
That was how I knew you for so long, and then realizing like, oh, Bill and Ted's and all the she's not really English. So
suddenly I'm talking like this, and everyone's like, "What are you talking about?" So yeah, great.
where did that come from? Because this is something I read your book, Diane Franklin, The Excellent Adventures of the Last American French Exchange Babe of the '80s, and it sounds like from the time you were a little kid that you were just an entertainer. Like, where did that come from? What was kind of the spark that made you want to throw out accents and stand on tables and sing in front of people? Like, what brought that out?
Well, I have to be very honest. It was pretty weird. I wasn't a kid who was showy as much as I was a kid that was creative. You could not stop me from being creative. From a young age, I was raised as an only child, so I had to keep myself busy. I didn't have a sibling to play with, and so I would be in my own world and dance and sing. And I think television at the time, because when you're young, you sat in front of the TV a lot, or at least during the 60s, parents put their kids in front of the TVs a lot because they were busy cleaning and doing whatever. So I had a very strong imagination, and I just would create stories. And my dad was a printer, so what he would do is bring home paper, and I would write books and draw and write poetry and write songs. And I sang and I danced, and I just did all that. And then so I think what happened was, from that, once you go into school, you start doing plays in school. And so I started, kind of being able to use all my talent, I would say, in a place that people would want to see you, like a school play or whatever. So I think that, but actually at 4 years old, that was really, I remember watching like That Girl. I started, I really wanted to be Marlo Thomas, who was playing an actress on the show, That Girl. And I think we really get inspired by the people. And it can be, I always say it's Marlo Thomas, and because that's a very quirky person. Like, people don't normally think about like her as an inspiration, but she was one of the few dark-haired actresses that at the time, and I really bonded with her. So sometimes you'll watch an actor and you go, well, that's me, or I understand that person has my energy, or that person speaks to me. And so that's how I originally got my instinct, my desire, to do it. And I really strongly think that, and it's funny, I teach kids now, and you can see at a very young age who lightens up and who just brightens up when they perform. And then there's another thing too. I've also seen kids who are very shy, but the minute you put them on stage, they open up and they free up. And I think that for me, certainly as a teacher, like, I can never put any kid aside. I can never look at a kid and go, oh, that they're not an entertainer, because you'd be so surprised with the right encouragement and the right belief, how they just blossom. And really, it's true.
Well, it sounded like, reading your book, like you had very supportive parents, which is contrary to so many interviews you hear where, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, and then I ran away from home and became an actor, or I became a director. And from an early age, did it seem to you that it was a viable path as a career? Did your parents really, really push that?
Well, that's such a great question, because, my parents were supportive, but they weren't like pushy. They weren't like, come on, baby, let's, get on Broadway. Like,
right.
They were not at all like that. They were like, what's do we do with this child? Their energy, like what's happening? Like they were more like just following my lead, like my interest. Mind you, I tried to, I guess we tried to get an agent when I was like 4, like, cause I bugged my parents. I was like, I really want to do it. I really want to do it. And I think people saw that I kept, performing, and I kept doing it until I was 10 years old. And I showed my parents, I still was interested. Eventually they wore down and they did it. But the question you asked, and I think this is a very good question, is, did they tell me, oh no, don't do it. You're not going to make it. And what if you don't? And this is where the advantage of having very old parents came in. My mom was 40 when she had me. And what happened was my parents were like grandparents. So by the time I was 10, they were in their 50s, and they were more like, life is short, do what you love. Like they really were surprisingly open-minded and trusting. And they never worried. I never felt any worry from them. Never. I mean, they didn't even have aspirations of me going to college. I think they just figured I would be who I was, and that was fine, which is a really amazing gift.
Yeah.
I think in America, sometimes people get nervous and worried. And it's so funny you say that. I just had a woman who I spoke to. I had a teacher I spoke to, and she said to me, oh, kids love to act, but, can they make a living at it? And I was like, oh my gosh, of course they can, but you don't see it. And it's because a lot of parents are nervous because they didn't do it. They don't know how to guide that child, and they get scared because they don't understand the freelance lifestyle. Yeah. So I'm saying, if you're a dancer, a singer, an artist, an actor, I'm going to even say athletes, you don't know where that paychecks. I mean, in a certain way, athletes have kind of a different path, or gymnasts, people who have a path that demands a different kind of lifestyle, a different schedule. The only thing I have to say is you must be self-motivated. And if you're the kind of person who it doesn't like to be self-motivated, I'm not even going to say you can't be. I'm going to say you don't like that life. Then acting and performing is not for you, because an acting life is when you're working hard, but you're always you also put out what you're going to do for your next job. When you're not working, you do anything you have to, if it's work at night or whatever, like you do it to go on those auditions during the day. Maybe you do 5 different jobs. I don't know what it is, but you find a way. Real artists find a way to survive and live. Can you have a family like that? That's the tricky part. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if you do have a family, chances are you probably need to start early or get savings, because once you have a child, to me, like I have kids, I did my career all before I had kids. Yeah. And then once I had my kid, I'm telling you, you have to give to that child. Yeah. And I don't mean money, I mean attention. Yeah. So, and this is what my parents gave me. They gave me their attention. And that doesn't mean they watched me dance and sing all the time, but they spent time with me, explained things to me, talked to me. This is a very important thing in life. And, today everyone's working so hard, it's hard to do. So but I will say this, let's say you have a child, you raise that child, you work really hard, that child grows up, now you can do some more acting, or now you can do your singing. And I'm not saying you have to stop at all. In fact, like, why not, maybe bring that child to a play you're doing, or, you know what I'm saying? But incorporate the child in the life, as opposed to, because if you, look, like there's no easy fix. If you have a child and it's early and you're like, okay, I have to deal with this, embrace the child into the world you're doing, and that child is a benefit. Yeah. But if you get mad at that child because you can't do what you want, well, then that's not good. So I could write a book.
Yeah. No, I talk with my wife about that all the time. It's like, it is such a different thing. We have a 4-year-old now, and it's such a weird thing, because like it's easy even when you're just a couple, getting started, it's like easy, like, oh, I can be the starving artist and I can do this and I can work long hours. And then it's like, yeah, but my kid can't starve and she can't work long hours. So it's a totally different thing.
And I'm going to say this, it used to be where actors were just like you're an actor, you didn't do anything else, or producer, that's all you did, or you're a writer and that's it. Today it's different. So you can be a writer, director, actor, barista, dance teacher, sales call person. I mean, you could do all the things even doing podcasts is part of your life. It's not all of your life,
Yeah.
For me, even as a teacher, I do movies, I still do movies, but, I actually, when I had my kids, I wound up going back for my degree. I had not finished my degree because the business pulled me out. When an opportunity knocks, you better answer. And the business pulled me out. I did a lot of movies and stuff. And then when I got married, it was like, okay, I'm pulling back and I'm going to focus on my family. And I had my, kids, and I started teaching because I wanted to give back, but also that's the way I could bring my kids into teaching drama. So I started teaching acting, and so they learned a lot. And then I wound up going back for my degree. Why? Because I feel like as you get older, why should we ever stop learning? Seriously, fill the cup. It's so weird. I don't even get it. People just go, done with school, now I never can go back. What? I want to learn Russian. I want to, I'd like to learn gymnastics. I'd like to, do philosophy. There's so many science. So why do we judge ourselves and stop growing?
That's something that's evident in all of your interviews and in your book, is that you constantly are referencing people that you learned from or were influenced by. And, I thought it was really interesting because in your book, you talk about, you were trying to think of what tone to bring across in your auditions and what to be. And you came across the word nondescript, you wanted to be the same in the waiting room as you were in the actual audition. And when I was looking at some of the people you've cited as inspirations, they all have that kind of vibe around them, this very natural, kind of naturalistic vibe. De Niro, who's probably the most extreme. I mean, he's got personality, but he's very real feeling. Meryl Streep, Lucille Ball, Marlo Thomas, is that what kind of drew you to their performances, that they felt like real people?
Well, actually, what drew me, and it's interesting, all of these actors have an energy. They have a aura. And they affect you. There's an intensity in different ways. Marlo Thomas is an upbeat, Lucille Ball has that, kind of, she has a feeling of there's one sense of wonder to her. Whenever she acts, she always is taken by surprise by things. And that's what makes it funny. She's the first time she's doing it, and she's really taking in the moments. And I just always thought that was really cool. There was a character that she wasn't a know-it-all. She was the one who was like, oh, okay, well, there's no judgment. There was an innocence, right? Yeah. And with De Niro, all of these people are authentic to who they are. De Niro's always De Niro, but at the same time, what I love about De Niro is he gives to his characters. He is completely vulnerable, and it's almost like, I've actually met him, and I saw him prepare once for a scene, and it was so awesome because it was really awesome because he did what I love. You see, when you really have your acting skill down, you can go in and out of it like with precision. So one of the things he did, which was really interesting and inspiring, was he was really getting himself all upset, he's mad, and he was in his own world. And then someone introduced me to him and said, "Oh, Bobby, this is Diane." And he was like, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you." Okay, and then I got to prepare. I'm like, "Okay, fine." And he was back to this thing, and I was like, "That's it. He could be who he is, and he could come out for a minute, and obviously, but he's working, so he goes back to his job." So, to me, that is a very inspirational kind of actor. The person who knows who they are, but they also know who their character is, and they can go into it. They have that, they have this sense of, and not all actors work this way, but you can allow yourself to be in it, but you also, I'm going to say you're the leader. You're in charge of your character. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like as well as Meryl Streep, you know, when I see her perform, I look at her and I think she doesn't care what anyone thinks. Yeah. I mean, she might care, you know, later on, but when she's working, her main objective is to be, you know, to be that person. And there's almost like the rest of the world doesn't exist. I am this person. Let's make this happen. Yeah. And I love that. I love that feeling. Yeah. That's to me, like, I love. So that's why when I get acting roles, most exciting thing to me are the roles. It's not the films as much as the roles. I really am attracted to good roles. And if the role feels good, then I'll be like, yes. And if the role doesn't feel right, I'll be like, you know what? This isn't going to showcase me well because it's not me. Like, I'm going to also tell you, if you're an actor, if there's the greatest role in the world, but if you're not right for it, it won't service you. It will not service you well. It will be like, it will seem like you're a bad actor if you're not cast well. So it's important to, you know, trust sometimes. If you get hired in something, maybe you don't see it, but they do. So then, you know, commit fully to finding your place in it. You know?
Right. Yeah, that's something that's so, you know, like again, like with everybody you mentioned, like they are unique. Like De Niro is over the top at times, but like it still feels like he is just he's in the scene and that's him. It doesn't feel forced. And I think sometimes you see someone try to be an edgy character, a tough character, and
because it's who he is. Yeah. I see what you're saying now, because there are some people who are De Niro wannabes. Yeah. Like they want that intensity.
Yeah.
But it has to come from you. And that comes from life experience. Mm-hmm. You can't act what you don't know. Somewhere along the line in your life, something's happened where you can access that. And so, it's got to be, you know, my husband says it's so funny. He had a acting teacher, I think at NYU, who said this to him. And it was like, some people, deep down, there is no deep down. So like, I always remember that. I was like, oh, I never occurred to me that, but there's some people who don't go that deep.
Yeah.
And actors do. You feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk a little bit about your, one of your first major roles, which was Last American Virgin, which actually I had watched so many of your films getting ready for this interview. Some I had already seen, some that I hadn't seen yet. And Last American Virgin is very hard to find streaming. And I was like getting down to the wire trying to find a way to watch it. And just barely last night, I was like, okay, I found it. Let's watch it. And so we watched for the first time. It's the first time I'd ever seen the movie. And it's great.
Thank you. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because people who think, oh, Last American Virgin, it's a light title, it's, you know, silly.
It's not.
It's like a teen, you know, it's a teen sex film and all that stuff. And I always thought, you know, when it came out, and certainly with the title, it lures the audience in, especially guys, thinking, oh, this is just a TNA film and, you know, whatever. But it is a great film. Yeah. It is actually, it played at a Lincoln Center, actually, because it is such a surprisingly, and it is timeless in a way. It's an 80s time capsule, but it still affects you today. And so when you say that to me, that's what it makes to me. It's a classic because you still can identify with it today.
It's one of the first films to really portray teenagers as people, you know, like not a kid or a cardboard cutout. How did you go into that role? Because you're a newer actress at that time. You're going into it. You've got, talk about life experience. I mean, you were 18, right, when you shot the movie? 19.
So, there's a big difference.
Yeah, big difference. At the time, it feels like it, but you know, how did you go into that? Because everybody feels so grounded, so real, and the performances are all really solid in that movie. I mean, how did you enter that project?
And I'm so happy you asked this question, because the film is, first of all, obviously the film is based, for those who don't know, on the director's life. He is the writer-director, and it follows a film called Lemon Popsicle, which was done in Israel. That film, Lemon Popsicle, Last American Virgin, is a remake of Lemon Popsicle. Lemon Popsicle took place in the 1950s, and then Boaz Davidson, the director, writer, turned it into a 1980s film. And it is, if you see both films, shot for shot, the same film. You will not believe it. It's one of the coolest things you'll ever see. I've never seen a film that did that, which is cool. Okay. And then, so growing up in the 70s as a teenager, you know, I can't say this for sure, but I have to say that in the 70s, maybe it's because parents were working and they didn't get very involved with what their kids were doing. And so there was no phones, and you had to be much more adult as a kid, because like you didn't have the luxury of calling your parents if you got in trouble or if something happened. You had to handle it, you know, and it could be anything from, you know, your parents, you know, the bus, you missed the bus and now you got to walk home, or you know, somebody's beating you up at school and you can't get help, like, or you have like, or somebody calls you and breaks up, and like, it's not on the internet. Nobody knows what's going on, and only you are going through this. And, you know, and your parents ask you, what's going on? Like, you're like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, I don't know. There was just a different feeling. So from that, I have to say that to me, I felt like kids at that age really grew up a little bit more because they had to be more self-reliant, because they didn't have the luxury of the communication we have with cell phones today, which I think is great. It's important. Like, if you're in trouble, it's wonderful. But at that time, kids were a lot more, you go to a party and you can't call your parent to take you home. If you don't have a ride home or something, and people are doing drugs or whatever, like you have to figure it out, and you have to stand on your own in your dignity. You have to deal with it. You know, yeah, I'll take it, or sure, I'll take, like, you have to be very, you have to know who you are, because very early age, you have to kind of say what you're willing to do and what not. So that's the first piece of information about that film. Like, I feel like I was grown up a little bit more. Plus I started acting when I was 10 years old. So I was actually used to being a professional, which meant, you know, get in the car, you know, my mom would take me to the city, take a subway or bus. I was in New York City at 10 years old, going for auditions, you know, coming back, doing my homework in the car. Like, I was very organized in that way with my mom. Like, you know, she took me at the beginning, and then later on going to New York by myself and meeting my dad. And then later on just going by myself on auditions. And so that maturation and that slow development of learning to be on my own, made me feel confident and good. You know, it's a good feeling to be, it's a really wonderful feeling to be a teenager and feel like you can handle the world, which, mind you, you don't know, there's things you don't know, and you probably shouldn't handle the world, but we do. And I think kids who don't have a lot of hands-on parents are handling the world much younger than even teens. I mean, we have kids who are, you know, I know a kid that had to make her own breakfast when she was in elementary school because her mom was sick and she had to do it. You know, she had to just do it. So there's a lot of circumstances that affect that, where you grow up faster, or maybe you have a little younger sibling and you're responsible to take care of them, and you're still a kid yourself. Yeah, you're like, right. Oh, I don't want to do this, but mom's working, dad's doing that. I got to be the babysitter. I got to deal with it. So you grow up, people grow up faster. Anyway, Last American Virgin is about even further the relationships, you know, and I always felt like I was always, I had a couple of boyfriends before I did Virgin, and I fell in love. And I think that as an actor, you got to fall in love. You got to have your heart broken. That's just the way it goes. Life goes like that. Like, you can't grow up unless you have tragedy. And I mean, you know, until you've experienced falling in love and not having love and the ups and downs, because that's what you're going to play. I mean, essentially, you know, you're going to, that's what certainly entertainment films and movies, they focus on that, because that is such a big part of researching to find the right person. So that film happened, and before I did it, I thought, okay, well, there's a lot of, like, you know, sexiness and there's nudity in the film. And I thought, okay, but the one thing I have as an actor is to show this experience that I had emotionally and to pay tribute to it, my personal experience. And so I feel like what I did in the film was I made it personal. I mean, I just took it and I just said, all right, I'm going to give my all and my vulnerability and everything, because that truth is, I mean, at the time I didn't know how others would take it, but I knew for me, I had to say it. Like I knew it was important.
Yeah, so, it was coming from a real place.
Yeah. So, and everybody in the film, it was Lawrence's first film. That was the guy who played Gary. He was 17, so he was very believable. Wow. We didn't even know he was 17. So that innocence was Lawrence. Yeah. And Steve Anton, who played Rick, was a little bit older than us. So his maturation and his confidence came because he was older than all of us. Like, he was like, you know, he was the one who was like helping all of us. So even off set, we all kind of, you know, took care of each other and were like holding on to each other, because we were the leads. Like, there was nobody to look up to as actors. We were the ones who carried the film.
It's crazy how good those performances are, especially Lawrence. Like, it's, I mean, that he's so believable, you know, and so relatable. And that's the thing, is the movie plays on, hey, it's the reason it still plays the same now as it did in 1982, is that it is a believable group of people, and it's universal experiences, different contexts, obviously, different plot devices that get you there, but the beats hit the same and resonate with so many people. That's why it worked as a foreign film first, and then in the US.
And people have asked me this, and would you like to make it a remake? And I would like a sequel. That would be very fun if Lawrence and I were adults and you got to see us fall in love and have that love scene you always wanted. And that would be very fun. But I'm not against having a remake if it was done with everything contemporary, like the sexting and the texting and all the things that kids are going through today. But they'd have to keep the same ending. It would have to be the same movie, maybe the same shots, and Boaz Davidson was trying to do that at a certain point, and they almost had Steve Anton direct, because he's a director now. But then I don't know, things got backed up, and so it didn't happen. Who knows? Maybe another director someday will do it.
Yeah, I think if it was to be remade right now, I think with all the 80s nostalgia, they would probably push for it to be a period piece. But I think it would be interesting to see that now. Maybe with your characters as parents, walking another generation through. It'd be really, really interesting. So there's something really curious here with the depiction of teens. And you talk about in your book, going from children to being the teen babe, kind of vibe. And when it comes to depiction of teenagers, when you look back now, as a parent yourself, you look back at the depiction of sexuality with teens in movies, do you read that differently? Does that affect you differently, some of those scenes or roles?
When I see myself in the film in Virgin now, I go, oh my gosh, I look so young. I mean, I look like I'm 14. Like, oh no. I was like, and I was 19. So therefore, everyone can just relax, take a deep breath. Okay, I wasn't abused. I wasn't forced. There was a contract. It said exactly what I would do and what I would not do. And I think that is really important for actors to know, actresses or actors, if you are doing nudity, it's always decided right before. It's not decided right before, but it's always decided in your contracts. And if someone on set says, hey, why don't we add this? You say, no, it's not in my contract. And that's the way it goes. So never worry. Just say, no, I'm not in my contract. And don't feel like they're going to get fired off the set. Believe me, they will not fire you off the set. They've worked very hard to hire you. So, and you could say it very nicely. You don't have to be all angry but I had a situation like that at one point, and I was like, not my contract, sorry. It
was interesting, like reading your book and talking about, controversial roles like Brooke Shields, and the way it changed perception. I was wondering if you looked back at those films and thought, like, from Hollywood's representation of teenagers, there's being true and realistic to life circumstances. And then, do you feel like, looking back, is there like this level of exploitation too, of like, oh, now you are the babe, or oh, you are the adult, when they really weren't yet,
I'm glad you said that. And I will say this. I was raised, and my films I did were not, I was still the victim of the situations. In Virgin, I was the girl who didn't stand up for herself, essentially. She was passive. She was also in Amityville II, passive. I wasn't the role model of what you want a girl to be. But then when I did Better Off Dead, that's when it shifted and I was able to be a role model, which I have to say is why Better Off Dead is my favorite role, because it's the best role model for young girls.
It's so it's an empowering role. Like it's such a, I mean, really, if you look at Better Off Dead, you know, it's easy on first viewing to say like, oh, you're one of the side characters of many side characters, but you're kind of what propels the movie forward. Like the last decision for him to do the act of going and skiing, like that is all your character motivating him. And
yes. And I just want to bring up how different that is from Virgin. So what I want to say is from the early 80s to the end of the 80s. Well, early 80s was girls were objects. They were objects of desire, unless they were a tomboy, and then that was a different story. But as the 80s went you started seeing more girls with speaking their mind, not just being smart, but also being well-rounded. I think that's what it is. And so I often think like, you know, when people look at me as an actor, I hope that they see the evolution of my characters and also how it turns, but also maybe this is, you know, Karen from Last American Virgin, you maybe learn from. I don't want to be like her. You know, I want to be you maybe want curly hair, but you maybe say, oh, you know, I wish I had made, I want to be her, but a better version, or I'm not going to be that vulnerable, or I'm not going to be that, you know, make wrong decisions, you know? So I just think that it's very important with teen films for everybody to see these individually and then also make their decision about what would they do, you know, their circumstances.
That's what was so great about Last American Virgin, is that it just, again, it doesn't just play in caricatures. Like it's not just showing you like, here's broadly, here's the jock, here's the nerd, here's the, you know, you definitely have those roles. But it's, again, it's all very real, and they all are flawed, just like human beings are flawed, you know, and exactly. And, and it is interesting seeing your development in each of your roles, and they are roles. So it's, you know, sometimes you're playing the very passive and very innocent, and sometimes you're playing the take charge, you know, type of character. And I want to talk about Better Off Dead, because like I said, that was on repeat all the time at our house, and it was a constant. My mom's obsessed with that film. What was it like, you know, getting started on that movie, working with Savage Steve Holland, and you know, really falling in love with that character?
Well, this was the first film that was again, it was a writer-director. I love working for writer-directors because they take that movie and then they move it to the next level. Like they know, they see it in their head. So it always comes out really well, I think, when you have a writer director, because it's not like they're giving their baby to somebody else and say, you raise it, you know, it's they're like, oh no, this is how it goes. So that's very cool. I was so excited to work with Savage on the script. To work on the film, because first I loved Monique. I was like, I want that part. Like I really felt like I could make it great. It connected to me energy-wise. I really was like, I'm very similar to her thinking. So that was part of it. But I also love artists. I love animation. And I love the fact that they took claymation, animation, and I found that was like really outstanding to do a film that included that. Because I also liked art. I went to art school as well. And so Better Off Dead, the humor, it was so funny. And it wasn't crude funny. Up until that time, every movie had crude humor because people didn't know how to necessarily be funny. So they're either doing bathroom jokes or they're, you know, falling down, or, I mean, that's what was so interesting from coming from an animation background is people who are in animation, they understand that the funny part of animation is what's going on in the background with what's being said, you know, juxtaposition. And I just love the film. So I'm really happy you love it.
No, it's wonderful and quirky and weird, you know, and that movie and One Crazy Summer are both ridiculously fun and entertaining movies. And you're right, they are different, you know, and it's honestly, it's what I expected Last American Virgin to be. I expect it to be kind of like the Porky's-esque style comedy, but it's not. And Better Off Dead, same thing. When you hear 80s comedy, something comes out in your mind, and it's decidedly not that. Like, it's a very clean, for lack of a better word, very clean movie. It's quirky and strange and very deliberate choices that either land really hard, and then the ones that don't, it's funny because they didn't land the way. So it's a good blend.
I have to say something to the filmmakers who are listening to this. This is really important, okay? So when we first read Better Off Dead, when we first had the script, there was a lot of foul language in it. There were some things that were somewhat inappropriate, okay? Now, filmmakers in general, and I bet it's you, always think, well, I'm going to put the F-bomb in there, and I'm going to write this, and then what's wrong with you? They're all timid people writing these movies, and da-da-da. Let me just tell you something. All filmmakers are like that. All filmmakers want to do, I'm going to say this and do this, and no one's ever done this. Well, yes, they have. But guess what? When you go to a studio, they're going to take that out because they want more audience to come see it. So Savage had to deal with that. At first, when he had his script, he, as a young filmmaker, and he was 24, came in and was like, here's my script. And everyone went, that's hilarious, despite the bad language, right? Because everyone thought, oh, bad language is in there, so that means we'll get audiences. At that time, you had to go to a movie to hear that. You had to go in the theater to hear bad language. You couldn't hear it at home. Well, nowadays, you hear it everywhere. You're on TikTok, whatever. So there's no reason to do it. So what happens is that language is taken out. So filmmakers, wise up. Get your talent up, like get your standards up, because the idea is that just because you say a bad word or an F-bomb doesn't make it any more entertaining. It needs to be the voice of your character. And I don't mean blah, 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 but I mean like it has to be the story. It has to be the truthfulness. But it has, as you can tell, Better Off Dead had the, and when I say voice of the director, it's just like, it's so totally Savage. Like, I mean, I can't even explain that. Good filmmakers, they just come and their work is original. So I had to say that because I want you to know that happens. Filmmakers think, oh, I'm going to do this. And they took it all out because they wanted to increase the general audience. And you know what? It didn't even make a difference. It was still funny. Yeah. So that's the point. The point is you take that dialogue out and it's still hilarious. So,
well, that kind of was exactly what I wanted to ask about, because it seems like so many modern comedies have dipped back into being plant the camera here on a tripod, here on a tripod. So you've got two close-ups and your wide shot, and then they just try to outshock each other. And that is, it's a lot of improvisation, and with Better Off Dead, what I was kind of curious about is the movie feels like you just went bananas on set every day, and like it feels like there's this crazy chaotic energy to it. How much of that movie is improvisation versus actually structured, like here's the script, here's the shot, here's the weird side plot of, the cooking and things like this, like, because it does feel chaotic, but it also feels extremely organized and well planned out.
It was very planned out. And it was very organized, and also during the 80s, improv was not encouraged. It was not encouraged at all because obviously, writer directors usually try to make a point. But here's what happened. So every scene, well, first of all, what Savage did was he hired really talented people all around. People loved the script, so they were willing to do it. I mean, I honestly said when Vincent Schiavelli decided to do it, and he was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and Oscar-winning, Oscar-winning film actor. I was shocked that he decided he wanted to do it. I mean, big people wanted to be in this film. So what happened was every scene that was done was what had the attitude of like almost you're in the scene and it's almost like a short, so that scene uses everything it can out of the scene. So for instance, in my particular case, when I went to when I go into the restaurant with John to have the TV dinner, he takes me on the date, and they were going to just shoot me walking in, but then because Savage, he trusts his actors. Like he said, well, anybody, if you have an idea, let me know. And that doesn't mean he took every idea, but he takes what works. So I was like, oh, you can't just have me walking in. I have to have a blindfold, because he would want to surprise Monique. I don't want to know it's the burger place when I walk in there. I might have an attitude about it, or, so I don't want to have any negativity, coming into that. I would be totally surprised. So we just off the cuff, somebody found some kind of thing to put around my head, and I walked in. And and then I can be surprised in the room. So the people that were in the film, the improv was always based, whatever we did, on what the importance of the scene was. And it always had to further the character. So as an example, when Danny runs, Dan Schneider, I'm meeting John Cusack in front of the school. I'm shaking his hand. We're having this moment. And Dan Schneider comes up and he has a balloon, but he accidentally drops it. And then he kind of does a little dance, and then he comes to us. That's indicative of his character, who he is. He's childlike. He's a kid. He's not grown up yet. He's not ready for a relationship, but he's going to try to make his stand afterwards. So we see how silly it is that, like, here's this big guy, but he's still a baby. He's, a little kid. And then yet he comes in. So it's a very subtle nod to reminding the audience, this is still a kid that's not ready for a relationship. And so, like, there's little things in it. So there was a lot of improvising, but it was in the script, everything was on the script, but the improvisations were done within the confines of what was necessary in the scene. And Savage did a lot of footage, and some of it he kept and some he didn't. So, but I will say, shooting the movie, oh my gosh, so funny. And when Mrs. Smith grabs my cheeks and she does that, I mean, nobody expected that voice to, like that voice to come out, and the combination of her bright hair and the bright clothes and the thing. And it was the combination when we were on set, that energy, it just, everyone's energy, went off each other. And it was, it was so, so, so funny. And even when I was in that scene with the photo and looking at Danny was a genius, because he was like playing with his little doll, and that doll represented like me. Like, I'm the little, so he's like, I want to have a doll, and she's not going to be my big person doll. Like, he's not ready for a relationship. So he's playing with it, and he's like looking over at me, and I'm like, so understated. And that gave the nice juxtaposition to Mrs. Smith, who is over the top. So, and then I can play it more real, because I'm with the super understated, very big actor, and then I can fill that middle in. So it's all kind of I would say, the combination of Savage's vision, and then because he was a good director and trusted his actors, he hired actors he could trust, then he could allow us to do some things. And if he decided wanted to use it, fine. If not, he can tell us, oh no, make it more subtle or bring it up. But we knew how to follow direction. We knew how to bring it up and not down. So I'd say when you hire actors, the more experienced, the more they can like alter their performance, like bigger, small, they can, what is it like? It's like a tuner, you can make it higher or lower, but very subtly. When you have people who are inexperienced, you're going to have to be much more hands-on, do this, do that, because they don't see the big picture like you do. If the director sees the whole story, so he's like, oh no, right here, I want you to do, just don't look just look off in the distance. Don't say anything, just stop. So you might have to just explain something, but the actor may not know what's really going on. So, and that, if you like that person, if that person has vulnerability, it's worth it to you to direct them. Well.
Yeah. Has there ever been a point in your career where, you had an idea for the character where you thought, like, this is what my character would do, and the director said, that's not what your character would do, and where you're
absolutely. I have a good one. Last American Virgin, when we went to the house, and it was before we go for the abortion, and I'm really sad, right? And I'm just standing there, I'm looking down, and I wanted to play that scene heavy crying, because I was like, I thought I'd come into the house and I'd break down into tears. And Boaz said, no, I want you to watch this. And he showed me the clip in Lemon Popsicle of the girl just standing there and just looking down and tearful, but looking down with no movement. And so that, and I went, oh, okay, that's what's going on. Like, to me, in my vision of it, I went, oh, I would be, so upset and so, team that I am, so emotional. And then here's the director going, nope, she's just still, and she's just no movement. And the focus on that scene really was on Gary trying to make everything better. And she was just standing there. And Gary's like, the house is this, and, I got this, and the grandmother here, and, and so he's got the energy and I'm just still, and you realize he can't say anything to make me happy.
Yeah. Well, that's two examples, two very different films, two very different examples, but like Better Off Dead and what you just mentioned, like when you have the chaos of Ricky and his mom and you're being the still, very calm, quiet presence, and they're doing their thing very well, and the big and loud. And same thing with Last American Virgin. You've got him trying to figure out, he's frantic, he's trying to turn on music, he's trying to open the blinds and all this different stuff. And there's the contrast between you and him. And that's interesting because it is the same thing. Where a lot of movies, I think, fail is where, again, teen comedies, everybody's playing it to 11. So yes. Everything just feels like noise.
Too much moving, and the audience doesn't know where to put the attention.
Right.
There's too much going on. It's the same thing, like, honestly, as actors, there are times if you're Italian, if you're playing someone who's Italian, you're going to use your hands, right? And that's like fine. But generally, actors don't tend to use their hands because we want to focus on their face. We want to focus on their eyes. We want to focus on what they're saying. We want to focus on the feeling. And if the hands talk too much, and there's been a thing where actors nowadays, I think I see a lot more hand movements. It takes away from the tension. It can take away from the focus of the people watching, so, but then again, and then also actors talking very quickly now used to be very slowly.
Especially in comedy, very rapid fire, quirky dialogue.
Absolutely. Everything's rapid fire. I'm going to say what I think is interesting about that is, yes, the old generation can't keep up with the new generation. Like, what did they just say? And I didn't hear that. And I didn't get that. On one hand, it causes the audience to watch it again. So you're getting repeat watches because, I missed that the first time, which is what people want. They want people to watch a movie several times. And also what it does is it makes, it speaks to this generation of filmmaking. So we're going to look back 20 years from now and go, oh yeah, remember when they spoke really fast and that comedy was really, that was what was happening. So even though there might be people who go, oh, the movies are not like the 80s, we don't take our time anymore. Or even, remember like the 40s, and they would stand and they hit the light and then they turn. And, there was even slower. But now today, maybe some people go, oh, that's boring. But we can look at it artistically and go, oh my God, the light hit her face. It was so dramatic because she took her time. But the truth is, it all reflects its generation. Yeah. So that's what I think with the quick speaking.
You're still working and still acting and now teaching and what has that been like now? Because you've got this, iconic, you're an iconic figure, there's people who now that you're teaching who are watching these films, watching you play these characters and do you feel like there's a certain type of film or a certain type of trajectory that now, as you've moved forward in your career that you're like, okay, I want to do this. Like, this is the kind of passion projects that I have in mind.
Yes. First of all, I so appreciate you saying that. There are not many actors who are still acting today that acted when they were 10 years old. Brooke Shields, Lori Loughlin, who was with my manager. We grew up we had the same manager growing up. Elizabeth Shue, grew up with her too. We all started as kids, starting acting in New York. You don't see a lot of us still here. So I feel that it's a very, very special position I'm in. And I really, the reason why I'm acting today is also, it is a role modeling thing. Can you act as you get older? yes, you can. And I've had some, because I'm older now, I've gotten more character work, which is so much fun. And when I was younger, I wanted to do more character work. But you know what? I'm glad I got to do the ingenue, because I know people who wish they had played ingenues. And they were like, I never got to play an ingenue. And I'm like, so I'm really glad that I had that experience, and that people, it reminds them of the 80s. Like my work brings them back.
There's a legacy there. Yeah.
Yes, there's a legacy in the sense that, teen movies influenced teens who were growing up, and then will probably influence the future. People will look back at the 80s, at the films I was in, and go, that's what that was like back then, Yeah. So now that I'm working, and I'm doing all kinds of films. In fact, by the way, I just got a Lifetime Achievement Award 2 days ago, which was crazy. And when they offered it to me, I was like, wow, that means more than anything, because I made me reflect that I have had a career throughout my entire life.
Right.
So what my ideas for projects in the future, I would love to do a sci-fi, just like something, futuristic in outer space. I've never played that kind of character, and that would be amazing. That was a wonderful experience. Not even necessarily that, but I do love sci-fi, so that would be fascinating. And I've done horror now. I've gone to horror because that to me is where the drama is.
Yeah.
So I just did a Ted Bundy American Boogeyman, and had a.
I'm actually interviewing Daniel at the end of this month, so I'm really excited.
Oh my God. The scene in that film, like, people have said to me, oh my God, Diane, that was like so incredible, like so real. I was like, so what I'm doing now is I'm giving I'm getting to express myself as an adult woman in these roles that it's just a gift. It's really cool. I'm going to be in a movie called High Holiday, where I play a kind of a stiff, sort of Southern conservative woman. But anyway, so those are coming out. And a movie called Clay Zombie, where I play like an 80s VJ. So that's coming up. That's actually,
awesome.
It's super fun. That's an indie film.
Yeah.
But what I really haven't done, and I would love to do, is I would like to be on a show, and either recurring or on a regular television or some kind of series, whether it be HBO or Amazon Prime, something where I have a part, and it could be anything. I mean, it could be a crime drama, it could be a comedy, it could be a flaky mom, it could be a career, but a stage mom, it could be even an officer or something. It could be anything, or like even a Ghost Adventures type of girl, a ghost, like a X-Files, So I'm open. It just always has to be kind of about what people see me in. So if you're a filmmaker out there and you have an idea where I fit something that you're doing, don't hesitate to contact me, because it always is about the material. If I like it and I feel connected to it, I'll do it. And then I've had roles where it just doesn't feel right. I'm like, I can't do it. So you tell me. Then we'll see.
It's acting, Yeah, it's a different
exactly. Role. Hello, I could be evil, funny, actually, funny you say this. I actually did a film called Waking Nightmare. It has not come out yet, and at some point it will. And if you see this film, you will never ever trust me again. You will be so scared of me. I make the mother in Carrie look nice.
Oh, wow.
Pretty unbelievable. It's like an amazing acting job. Like, people who've seen it, they went like, oh my God, like, you should get an award for this. So if ever it comes out, go to film festival if it ever plays. Waking Nightmare. It
was really interesting watching like Amityville Murders, seeing you revisit, because it was such a different. Amityville 2 is obviously on its own, and you play for a brief second. You get to play evil, really quickly in that movie, which is shocking because that's the first time I had seen you in that context. And then going into Amityville Murders, you playing now the mother role in the film, a totally different angle and different perspective. And it's really interesting. It's just interesting seeing you get to continue to do more and more things, more and more angles and perspectives. And
right, to play the child in one movie, in the Amityville Part 2, and then to play the mother in the same story. No actress has ever been given that opportunity. And that's because of Daniel. He was an angel to think of me and have me come back. And the chances of, okay, you watch a movie, the chances that the actor that you asked to come back is even acting anymore is huge. Like the fact that I was able to act, I wanted to act, and I was ready to act, and then I was able to give a good performance is very rare. People don't usually do that,
Yeah. Well, and the fact Burt Young was able to come back was so amazing, and
it was so sweet of him to do that. I will always be eternally grateful for him to do that. He's an angel. That was such a nice thing for him to come, and I loved our scene.
Yeah. It was really neat watching those back to back, and Chelsea Ricketts is amazing in everything she's in. I watched Jackals a little bit before that, and she's so good in that, and she plays that very innocent character so well too. And it was interesting seeing you basically play the reverse roles in those films.
Fun. And she would do things that I remember doing, like she was on the steps and everything, and I was like, oh my gosh, deja vu, like she is doing the steps and the murder and the
no, I'm definitely excited to talk with it's an interesting connection because I'll be talking to Daniel, I think the 25th or something, right before Halloween, which is appropriate. So it'll be fun talking about that. But I definitely want to go ahead and move us into our random round. Like I said, I could talk about this forever, and maybe I'll hit up in February when your new book comes out, and we'll keep this going. But yeah, I end every single episode with this random round. So some quick questions, some quick answers, and get your perspective. What is a movie that your diehard fans would be surprised that you enjoy?
That I enjoy. All right. Oh, all right. What was it called? Wings of Desire. And the music is amazing. Yeah, and I almost think it's black and white now that I think about it, but it wasn't done in a black and white time. It is lovely. So yeah, maybe it did have no or very little dialogue, if any. I picture the poster. Interesting. I just pulled it up. Another one to add to the list. It's a very it's a film it's beautiful. Beautiful film. Poetic.
What is the best? I mean, you're kind of the queen of the 80s, but so you might be biased, but what is the best decade of film history?
Oh my goodness, that's hard. Okay. That's really hard. Wow. Well, the best decade. That's tricky. It's all about when you grow up, when you grow up, you have those films that you just think are so awesome. I mean, I love the films. I love the Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers and all those, the very beautiful looking dancing films and stuff. But the thing about those films is those musical films, they're very fun to watch, but they don't teach you anything. Like they just sort of you like them and it's like candy, but you maybe put them on a pedestal, It's just beautiful to watch them. But I will say that, and even silent films, great to watch. But all right, so I'm just coming from as being a kid. I have to say maybe the 80s. I was going to say the late 70s because Taxi Driver and all the gritty films that were very raw, I really liked. But that might be because I grew up watching them. But the thing that happened in the late 70s was it reached a level of realism it's interesting. The impact I think it had on audiences was that is someplace these are things I'm watching that I would never go to and never do, but it grounds me. It makes the audience go, okay, I'm grateful for my life, or I'm glad I'm not that person, or you know what I mean? It makes the audience go calm. But the 80s was a time where it kind of was get out there, do your thing. You can make it happen, right? Yeah. So I have such high energy. I kind of like that calm thing going on. Like, here's a heroin addict in the he's suffering in an alleyway in New York, and he's finding his pimp, and they're like, you know what I mean? Like, to me, like, that was like, oh wow, that's so deep, and like there's so much going on underneath. And so I kind of bought into that. But I will say that what was best, the best generation for me, I think, is the 80s, because it is an upbeat genre, and right now we need that. So.
Yeah, it's a reason it keeps getting dipped back into. I mean, everything right now is an homage to that time period, and it's uplifting. It's a party. The 70s was very much the art. It was early Scorsese, that very gritty, grungy, interesting aesthetic. And, I don't know where the world is right this second. I don't think people are clamoring for that, And
I'm going to tell you what I now realize too. See, in the 70s, it was very commercial. Everything was very like product and sell and buy. So all those films, like the Scorsese films, was it's like countering that and saying, all this stuff is fake. We need realism. So that's why realism was born out of that fakeness. And then the 80s was it was like a rebuttal to like, we got to be upbeat. Like it was a time of women were getting in power, like women were empowered and like wearing power suits and like, we can do it. And it was a time of sexuality. Oh, sex was so big in the 80s. Like, that was the other thing I forgot. Sex was huge in the 80s. Sex was like so big because people, I guess AIDS was happening. So they were like kind of working against that. And like, so sex was free. It wasn't like free like the hippie age, but it was like, go, have sex, and you're an empowered woman, and women can have men, then go out and date many men. And so, not just men. And so very empowering time for women. So, I can see why, now like people go back to that and go, whatever happened to that time where there was a sense of confidence and success was in the future, and you were going to be a business person, you're going to have a business. And so every generation has their motivation. Right. And also you say to me right now, why are we going back to that time? Because right now, all the people who grew up in the teen years are now adults, and we are longing for the old days. We look back. We want to hear that music, and we want to, we want to feel that. So that's why it comes. Every generation will have it. The 90s will come back.
Yeah.
Maybe it is already. I don't know.
Yeah. If you were given the green light to remake any film, what would you choose and why?
Wow. That's a great question. Any film, or like the ones of films?
Any film. It could be one that you've made, or it could be a completely different movie.
Wow. Well, I wouldn't want to make Better Off Dead, but I would, because I would want my daughter to be in it. I want her to play Monique. So that's like, okay, so that's just a little like my thing, right? And oh wow, I would do a Virgin if we redid Virgin. I would be interested in doing that. I would even consider writing that. That'd be kind of cool. Do that again. But wow, remake of a movie. See, it's so funny. I never think of remakes. I always think of like what's new based on what we have going on in the world now.
Yeah.
Like I'm waiting for the movie about the pandemic through the eyes of like a kid or a teenager. Like when's that going to come out where we're going to see that where the pandemic isn't scaring people. It's just like a thing I have to deal with, Yeah. But I don't know. I have to think about it. That you stumped me with that one. I don't know what I would.
Good. And then the last question I always ask is, like I mentioned, we have a lot of aspiring filmmakers that listen, directors, actors, writers. If you could give one piece of advice to an aspiring filmmaker who's listening, what would it be?
I have a lot of thoughts in my mind, but suddenly made me quiet. Don't keep moving forward. Keep moving forward. Don't stop. As a filmmaker, don't just make the movie. Don't wait for other people's permission. Don't wait for other people's money. Find a way to make it. Make it with friends. Make it happen. like, I think a lot of times if you're a filmmaker and you feel and you run into well, if you're the kind of person who's a filmmaker, you're probably a filmmaker because you do move forward. You know, you're not somebody who takes no for an answer. I remember Brett Ratner, he said something like, you know, he never took no for an answer. And I always thought that was very cool because he made people give him money. He made people, you know, give him opportunity. He didn't give up. If they said no, he bugged them until they did. I mean, not to say that you should bug people, but it is kind of interesting, you know, like if people see your passion, they will do it. And if you want to get something done, also, you know, find your own sources, be strategic. I mean, if you need to earn money, you could do what do they call that?
GoFundMe.
GoFundMe, or you can, you know, maybe you find a sponsor and you contact them directly and you say, listen, my film is, you know, going to be taking place, you know, in, you know, it's going to have, you know, products in it that represent your time period. What do you say? We do a deal where you bring in your product. Like think about your project. Think about what kind of people would be involved in that what kind of products would be used, and maybe you can contact those people and be strategic and trying to find a way to make it happen. And I say this to writers too, because there's so many people who are great writers, but they have the script and all they do is go, what agent will read it? That's old school. We used to do that, but nowadays those people get left in the dust because the chances of things getting made, they don't move as fast as you should.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
You give a script to somebody, they say, I'll look at it. And then 3 years later, they haven't looked at it and you've wasted 3 years. And guess what? Your content is now out of date. So if you've got something, especially if it's current, you've got to find a way to think in terms of, how can I make this happen? What do I need to do? And you need to do it yourself because no one will care about your film as much as you do. Wow. And then if you show that you care, people will then want to jump on board because they see how much you're into it. And here's an example. I'll give you this great example. The gentleman who did the movie Clay Zombies contacted me during the pandemic, asked me to film scenes for him and send them to him. All right. So first of all, what kind of person does that? Like, excuse me. First of all, he contacted me because he's a huge fan of mine. So it came from a sincere place. 2, Play Zombies. I could have said, Play Zombies. I'm not doing that. He took the chance to be brave and to find a way to contact me. Found my email, wrote me a letter. 3, I loved the idea of Play Zombies. I said, I love that based on the title. I want to be in this movie, Play Zombies. I'm in. 4, he sent me the script. I looked at it. I told him, I like this. I don't like this. I was very honest with him. And then he was willing to work with me. I said to him, I'm going to shoot this. I'm not a person who knows how to shoot things, but it was the pandemic and I had lights and I had backgrounds and I was like, okay, I'm going to make this happen. And I actually, it was a growing thing for me too. I was like, okay, let's see if I can shoot something. I make the set. It was very fun for me to even do it because I was going out of my comfort zone. Yeah. Most actors, probably not. They would have been like, I'm not showing up and doing it unless I'm not a set designer. I'm not a clothing designer, you know, but he happened to find the right person. He asked. So I shot the scene, sent it to him. I don't know how to transfer things. I figured it out. I learned, I went beyond. So he gets the material. He loves it. He adds it to his film. And all the people in the film were so excited. They wound up reshooting scenes to make it even better.
Wow.
Then he said, I want a theme song for my movie. He called a band Cold that he liked. They wrote a theme song for it. And I said, what if I'm in the video? And he's like, oh my God, would you? And I'm in the video. So if you go to YouTube and say Clay Zombies, Fire Tiger, I'm in the video. So one thing leads to the next. You have to be brave. You don't know. And if I would have shot him down, what is he to lose? Yeah. I said no. So, and now I'm going to fly. He's flying me out to Ohio for the premiere and with Fire Tiger. And so we are going to be in Columbus, Ohio on October 30th.
Wow.
For the screening. So if you're in Columbus, Ohio, come to the theater and watch it with me. All right. We'll be there. So anyway, there's my story. Filmmakers, make it happen.
Yeah, no, that story is such a good example. And it is something where, like you mentioned, if you get a no, like you're in the same position you were when you started, like you're not losing anything. Like, but if they say yes, it's everything.
Gets you. Yeah. See, here's the thing. You have to find people who get you. And you know why I helped him? Because I want to help filmmakers. And why do I do? My daughter is a filmmaker. My daughter makes movies. And so I see how that helped her. So now I go, okay, if you've got material, maybe I can do something. Again, it might be not something I want to be involved in. I don't know. You have to take the chance, but that's what it is. You have to reach out to the actors. But this is the truth. You have to reach out to actors that you genuinely love. It can't be fake. It can't be just because they're rich or because they've got followers or, has to be from the heart.
Yeah. Well, it's really great advice. And like I said, I could talk to you for hours, and I want to say thank you for taking the time to do this and saying yes when I reached out via random message to do this.
You didn't know.
And it means a lot to me. And thank you for being as cool as you could possibly be. It really means a lot to me. It's always good when you meet someone that you've watched on screen and they're down to earth and just really easy to talk to. And it means a lot to me.
Merci buckets. And I have a question. Is your daughter there?
She's not. She's just putting down, I think, to go to sleep or taking a bath or something.
What's her name?
Piper.
Okay, so say bonjour, Piper, to her. C'est le Monique Junot, c'est là. Right?
Okay, we'll do.
Who's that, Mom?
We'll do.
Later.
My mom, on the other hand, would be thrilled, but no, just kidding.
What's your mom's name?
Oh, Marbeth.
Bonjour, Marbeth. Merci buckets for liking the film Better Off Dead. Merci.
She's going to flip out with that. So, no, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for listening to the episode. Be sure to head to the show notes, grab a copy of one of the two books that'll be listed in there, and a third book coming soon. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.